If you've ever worked at any school, if you've ever worked in any district in the United States, you know that sometimes it's difficult for children or students to be able to imagine things, to be able to think of characters they want to create, to be able to create new characters. And by the end of the lesson that I'm talking about today, I want students to be able to demonstrate mastery of the character interview, which really is just a guide to learning characterization, and it's a guide to, kind of learning the hard process of character creation. Because if you're having your kids read a book Catcher in the Rye, you kind of have to go through the hard process of what did J.D. Salinger have to go through to create Holden Caulfield, who was this incredibly detailed character with lots of and he because even the things that he says happen on so many different levels, and for kids to be able to think like that and write like that, it's not just something that I don't think it's something that just naturally happens, because it's not something that you really naturally think about every day. And so what the character interview is designed to do, it's designed for it to be a good place to start for students who don't know where to start. The character interview isn't necessarily good for students that already know how to characterize, or who already understand characterization. This is for maybe your student with an IEP, maybe a student that with special needs that doesn't know where to start. They don't know how to imagine things. They don't know what's going to happen next in their story. Uh, they just don't think on those dimensional levels of all these dimensions of a character. And the nice thing about a character interview is that you can start by if they're younger, you can scaffold it for younger kids. You could have them interview Tigger, have them interview Mufasa, Belle, the Little Mermaid, characters that they're familiar with. And you can scaffold it too if they're older, and ask them what movies they like, what books they've read, what kind of comics they read, and they could interview those characters. It can be scaffolded for any age, and that's why I like the character interview so much. But what you want to do is, after you've done 1 or 2 days maybe of interviewing a character that they already know, you want to try to have them create their own character and interview them. And if you go to my sample character interview, you'll see I created a character named Veronica. And you can click on there, you can read what she's like, where she comes from. And you really have to go through it with them, especially if they're already having trouble thinking of, just because you give them a paper and tell them how to interview a character, that's not really going to help them unless they see it concretely already done. And so I already made a template for you. You can read it. It's about this girl named Veronica who's from La Cañada. And you can read it, and you could ask kids leading questions. Someone from La Cañada, what would they be like? Would they be poor? Would they be rich? And kids can kind of answer that question based on context. And if you don't live near La Cañada like I do, you have to pick somewhere, pick somewhere where that kid can come from. And the questions that you want to focus on mostly are questions, the first of all, questions of setting. Is he from the Old West? Is he from the South, the North? Is he a surfer, and is he at the beach? Is he in the middle of a forest? Is he on a spacecraft? Wherever he is, you want to have your student try to decide a setting. And what I advise against is just creating pre-planned questions for them. Part of the problem with teaching is you want to give them all the answers. You want to just create these pre-planned Socratic level questions that they can answer just off the top of their head. I mean that they can answer just from what you've created. But the hardest part is having them do the question process creation for themselves. Give them a template, show them how you would do it, but then have them create their own template. And maybe they'll copy some of your questions, but maybe they'll come up with some of their own. And after they've thought about setting, you need to think about you need to have them try to think about how the character's feeling. And if they're having difficulty, ask them some leading questions, but have them be the ones that really are those journalists creating those questions. And you could start off by saying, well, how does he feel about his mother? How does he feel about his father? How does she feel about her aunt and uncle that she's living with? Or how does she feel towards her best friends or her brothers, or whatever it may be? So you really have to think about those settings and those feelings. And from there, you can create a pretty interesting and diverse character. And from there, if you go on and watch some of my other videos, you'll be able to see what you can do with that. And character interviews can be very powerful because students really do move beyond themselves.